This is Parque Nacional de Costa Rica. And of course, Costa Rica has a lot of national parks. This one might be a little bit deceptive in its name because it's not like a wild natural rainforest park. This is the national park in the sense that it is at the heart of a nation, at the heart of San Jose. And it's not gigantic and it's not super fancy, but a number of features here, and we'll be looking at some of them. And this is kind of the center of the tourist and historic district of San Jose, which isn't super extensive. It's not like the National Mall in Washington, D.C., but there's a couple things to see here. So that is the National Library. I haven't been in there, but I have walked by there before. I should probably find out now more whether that's just a library you can go into and you can, like, I don't know, sit down and read some comic books. And unlike in the United States, where libraries are something, you know, that every little town has, and they're kind of humble things, here there's only a couple of libraries, and I haven't been into one yet. It's not the center of town like it is. So we're just going to continue up this way. This park is only a couple hundred feet by a couple hundred feet. So not gigantic, but it does have a number of things to see, as we will see. So further along at this end of the park, over there is Atlantic Station, where we've been before when we've taken the train. So if you are waiting for that train to start at 3 o'clock, you have this nice park to sit in. It's also an example of a historic building and an architecturally interesting building around here. The Atlantic Station of the Incofer route. And in this direction, we're going to see something a little bit less interesting. So one thing that's kind of a disappointment for me, I've said this before, is you can be in a nice historic location with a lot of aesthetics, and then across the street you have parking lots and wires and old dilapidated buildings. And it's kind of a contradiction because this country is beautiful in so many places. In other places, not so much. So we're going to walk this way a little, and in just a couple minutes I've pretty much walked around the park. It is only a couple hundred feet by a couple hundred feet. Hopefully it's an interesting thing to watch. Let's walk on this outside sidewalk for a while. And on the subject of less beautiful architecture, and also on the subject of this being in the heart of San Jose, if you're used to the National Mall, you know that at one end is Lincoln Memorial and the other end is the Capitol, and then perpendicular to those is the White House. And here in Costa Rica, there is no White House. There is an office building for the president, but it's not a residence. He just lives in his apartment building. But we do have the National Legislature, and that's the National Legislature building, just sitting here by the side of the park a couple blocks away, next to some kind of normal-looking buildings. And the aesthetics of that building are no disputing in matters of taste unless you like that building where there's something wrong. I mean, it does have a certain majesty, but it's pretty ugly and it's kind of closed off. Look at those small windows. And that's also kind of in contradiction with Costa Rica as a small country and an open country. That the legislature building should appear almost military in a country that doesn't have a military. But like a lot of aesthetics, maybe it made sense at the time, but that's actually one of the few big government buildings you can see in San Jose. There's one more thing I want to see here. So this is a sculpture that's dedicated to a military victory of Costa Rica and an alliance of other Central American nations. There's basically a pirate from the United States named Walker, William Walker, don't care, who basically tried to conquer Costa Rica and turn it into a slave-owning state in the 1850s. And he was captured and sent back home, and then he tried to do it again, and he was executed for his problems. This was during the Franklin Pierce administration. Franklin Pierce was a terrible, terrible president. It's also interesting because, of course, now Costa Rica is demilitarized, but the ability to defend their country, I think, is still there if it needed to be. So that's a good thing to remember. Anyway, so after we looked at history, it's just a normal park, people hanging out, some other statues, nice landscaping. And like a lot in Costa Rica, it's not like overwhelming in its majesty, but it does have kind of its own, charm and nice place to walk, especially now in dry season. Just want to hang out in the center of San Jose. So I hope that was informative to see this park. I'm going to make that my thumbnail, even though I think I've used it already.